Google App Engine. The final product we're going to look at in the compute category here is the platform as a service offering in GCP known as Google App Engine. And this is a great product because it allows developers to do what they do best, write code and make great applications, and that's it. They no longer have to worry about the underlying infrastructure that supports their application. Let's jump in and see what it's all about. So with App Engine, again, we focus on code, not infrastructure. And that's every developer's dream because as a developer, what do you want to do with your time? You want to make your applications better. And the more time you have to do that, the better they're going to get. So that's what App Engine is all about. No infrastructure to worry about. We can just focus on writing code and deploying that code, and Google will take care of the infrastructure and the runtimes that are on the servers that host their applications. Now, App Engine comes in two flavors. We have the App Engine standard environment, which is what everybody's used to. It's what App Engine has really been known for a very long time. And then we have the new App Engine managed VM environment, which is still in beta, but we will talk about that towards the end of this nugget. So App Engine provides us with these managed runtimes, Java, PHP, Python, and Go. We build our application using the App Engine SDK locally in one of these runtime environments, deploy it up to App Engine, and it takes care of all the hard stuff, maintaining that infrastructure as well as one of the coolest features here, auto-scaling. Easily one of the coolest and most attractive features. Because building an application in the traditional sense means you need to plan for an infrastructure to handle a certain type of traffic, right? So if you build your infrastructure to handle traffic, along this line, and then your application gets hot and your application does this as far as traffic is concerned, what happens if your infrastructure is only built to handle that point right there? Yeah, it crashes and burns, and now you're out looking for a new infrastructure or upgrading your existing infrastructure, which takes an incredible amount of time and money. App Engine, it doesn't matter if your application does this, or that, because it will auto-scale based on traffic, and you only pay for what you need. So no more wasted resources in the case where you plan your infrastructure up here and your traffic sits down here, all that wasted resources. Or the reverse of that, you plan for this and your application goes like this, where you're really scrambling to think of ways to support your application. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because you also need a team to manage that infrastructure, where with App Engine, you don't. Google is your team. They're your pals. You don't have to worry about anything. Plus, they give us a free daily quota. Talk about attractive. We can build applications for nothing. There's no startup costs. There's no commitments. We can literally build an application, deploy it to App Engine. If we stay under that free daily quota, we'll never pay a dime. We also have SDKs for all these languages. So download the SDK for your language of choice, and that will allow us to do all of our development and testing locally. We also have tools that will then help us deploy it up to App Engine. Very easy to use tools. And App Engine works with a lot of popular development tools that you're already used to if you work in these languages like Eclipse, IntelliJ, Maven, Git, Jenkins, and PyCharm. Now, if you're using the App Engine standard environment, not the managed VM environment, then you'll need to conform to some sandbox constraints. No writing to the local file system, your request times out after 60 seconds, and you have a limit on third-party software installations. All these limits go away, though, with the managed VM environment. Both of these environments have their strengths, however. In fact, the one we're just talking about here, which is the standard App Engine environment with all these limitations, is extremely fast because of the pre-configured nature of the standard runtimes and because of many of these limitations. But it's not very flexible. On the flip side, the managed VM environment isn't as fast, but it's extremely flexible. You can even bring your own runtime. More on that towards the end of this nugget, and I'll talk about how you can decide what environment is right for you. Let's move on and take a look at a common workflow for building App Engine apps. So the process goes something like this. We again get the SDK installed for our language of choice, and then we develop and test the application locally. From there, we've got tools in the SDK that will assist us in uploading the application to App Engine. It's a very simple process. And that's about it. Once we deploy it, again, Google takes over from there, and our App Engine will automatically scale as traffic goes up and down. It'll scale up and it'll scale down. So again, we're only paying for the resources that we need at any given moment. But from a developer's perspective, this is it right here. Design, develop, and test it locally, upload it using the SDK, rinse and repeat. Back and forth, back and forth. This just frees up so much time. And it's going to allow you to create much higher quality applications because of all that extra time you gain from not having to worry about an infrastructure. Plus, we have a huge list of services that are built right into the platform and take very little effort to utilize. Again, if you were to build something like this in the traditional sense and you wanted to add something like Memcache or task queues or scheduled tasks, you would need third-party libraries and more developers and more time to incorporate things like this into your application. App Engine, they're just there, and they're incredibly easy to take advantage of. Here's a list of some of the popular built-in App Engine services that, again, we can easily take advantage of from within our applications. Users is probably one of the most popular ones because it allows us to piggyback right on top of Google accounts for authentication. So we can use OAuth 2 and OpenID for authentication and authorization. Also, modules. We can easily factor our applications into smaller logical components, and then we can, again, scale those parts of our application individually. We also have task queues, so we can perform background work outside of that 60-second limitation. We have sockets, so we can easily open up outbound sockets. We've got the search API, which is awesome. We can perform Google-like searches over our data. URL fetch, so we can call external URLs. We've got a nice logs API here. App Engine exposes an application and a request log with a lot of great detailed information around everything that hits our application. And we have access to these logs, and we can even ourselves write to these logs from our application. It makes it very easy for debugging and troubleshooting. We also have a mail API, so we can send and receive email messages as well as XMPP, so we can send and receive chat messages. One of those great features I was mentioning there is Memcache. This is just a fantastic way to increase performance and to save costs. Commonly used for read-heavy operations, and what are most of the web applications we're going to be building today? They're going to be mostly read, right? Usually the 80-20 rule applies there. 80% are going to be reads, 20% are going to be writes. So Memcache is just simply a key value in-memory data store. Some common use cases is to store things that don't change very frequently, like session data or user preferences, or something that's most commonly used is to speed up your data store queries. And it's very simple to code up. Here's a perfect usage pattern that you'll see common across all data store applications that use Memcache. An application will receive a query. And the first thing that application is going to do is check inside of Memcache. Is that data in Memcache? If it is, great. It will return that data right back to your application and avoid a hit to the data store, which will, of course, reduce cost. If it isn't in Memcache, then it will check the data store. If it's in there, great, it'll pull it out, store it in Memcache, and then return it back to the application. The only thing you really need to be careful of and design around are cache misses. Remember, this is one big high-performance shared cache. So things can get evicted from the cache at any time. So it's volatile, but you can design around it pretty easily. And that just simply means you need to handle those misses gracefully. If you don't find something in the cache, you got to go get it and put it back in the cache. But it's so worth it to use, and the effort to use it is so minimal that it's almost a no-brainer. So you'll find those parts of your website that don't change very frequently, those data sets that are relatively stale, and you'll put Memcache on top of them. And we've got ways to view the cache inside of the developer's console, and we've got local tools that can show us our performance gains and our cost savings. In fact, our lab here for App Engine utilizes Memcache. So you'll get to see it in action, and I'll show you how you can manage it here from the developer's console. So now that we've taken a look at all of our compute options here in GCP, let's compare them. So Compute Engine. Compute Engine is infrastructure as a service, and it's really meant for general computing. Again, Google handles the hardware layer. We're responsible for all the software that runs on top of it. Container Engine is a hybrid of both, meant for container-based workloads. And App Engine, language support here, Java, Python, Go, and PHP for our standard App Engine environment. And the managed App Engine environment, managed VMs as we call them, really allows us to bring our own runtime. But this is platform as a service, right? The fully managed infrastructure, fully managed runtimes, we just worry about developing the application, and this is really meant for web and mobile apps. Now, the new feature in App Engine that is still in beta is known as the App Engine Managed Environment, otherwise known as Managed VMs. This gives us standard runtimes with no sandbox constraints for Python, Java, Go, Ruby, and Node.js, plus we can bring our own runtime for any language that supports HTTP requests. That's really nice. So this gives us a much more flexible environment. In fact, we can even SSH into these VMs and manage them ourselves. This is what also allows us to bring our own third-party libraries to work with. So yeah, an incredibly flexible environment, and it's really just GCE instances, and that's what pricing is also based on. Now, the real beauty of the App Engine Managed VM environment is right here. Everything's done via Docker and containers. So what we'll do locally is get our application inside of a container the way we want it, the software stack that it runs on, all of its dependencies, and when we're done, we'll turn it into an image and ship the Docker file up to App Engine, and it's going to use that to spin up containers on GCE instances. And the real beauty is we're still going to get access to all of the features that App Engine has, like automatic scaling, as well as access to many of the services that we talked about. So which do you choose? Do you choose the standard App Engine environment, or do you choose the managed VM environment? And that's going to boil down to your requirements. The general rule is if you can get away with using the standard App Engine environment, do it, because the performance is incredible. We're talking millisecond latency to spin up the instances that host your application. So if you can live with the sandbox constraints and you can live with Java 7 and Python 2.7, which are the current runtimes for those languages, then do it. But if you need the flexibility, and maybe you have third-party dependencies for your application, or you need a specific runtime, then managed VMs will be the way to go simply because of the flexibility. No matter which one you choose, you're still going to get all those great features like automatic scalability, Google handling the hardware infrastructure, and access to many of those services we talked about as well. Let me give you a quick idea of where you can find App Engine here in the web UI and some of the things we can do with it. So if we hit the drop down, let's head down underneath the compute category. I'm going to pin this down for future access, and we'll hit App Engine. So we get a nice dashboard, and we don't have anything deployed here yet. We'll do that inside of our lab, so we don't have anything filled out. But the dashboard is really nice. Gives you a nice overview of what our current traffic patterns look like, what our latency looks like, how many instances we have running. A lot of great information here. We also have versions. This is cool because you can deploy different versions of your application. You can set up traffic splitting to do canary testing across them. We also have instances. So an instance is essentially what our application is hosted on. So as traffic goes up, well, our number of instances will go up that host our application. And we also, by the way, have full control over that scaling. There's all kinds of different levels of scaling you can do, and you can even split it out across your modules so you can scale different parts of your applications differently. Task queues, you can manage your push and pull task queues as well as your scheduled tasks. You can set up security scans to find vulnerabilities in your application, and you have a big list of all of your quotas in here across all those different services that we talked about. And also Memcache for managing and monitoring Memcache. Let me show you what this looks like from a real app. I've got my other account here. Let me just flip over to it. And we did a CP300 course called App Engine Qualified Developer quite a while ago. And here it is, GAE Nuggets right here. And in this application, I got to go back to App Engine here. There it is. This application was running for quite a while. We had quite a few requests. And look, if I do 30 days, we've still got some requests hitting it. But here's what the dashboard looks like, right? Pretty cool. And you can even scale this down to a specific version, and you can look at all kinds of different metrics. Latency, traffic, utilization, the number of instances. And right now I have no instances deployed, but if I click on this, and we haven't touched this application in well over a year since we did that course. So, oh, it still runs. Look at that. Cool. So that should have actually spun up an instance. Watch this. Let's head down to instances. Hey, look at that. There it is. There's our instance right there serving the request that I just sent in. Now, if we head back to the dashboard, we'll probably see it here. Hey, look at it. There it is. So we have one instance right now hosting that application. So if all of a sudden 1 million people hit that application, instances would spin up like crazy, and we'd have lots of instances hosting that app. But if we go to versions here, we deployed lots of versions. We had a version for every module back in that course. So here it is, each one of those. And if we click on this, it'll actually launch that specific version in a browser. So it's really cool that we can deploy multiple versions, manage them separately, view them separately, and then do things like this right here, traffic splitting, which is really, really cool stuff. So we'll get more into this inside of our lab for App Engine. We'll deploy an application, come in here, and manage it from the web UI. In this CBT Nugget, we covered Google App Engine, which is our platform as a service offering in GCP that allows developers to just simply focus on code. Do what they do best, build applications. They don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure that supports the application. That is all managed by Google. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.